From starting out as eye protection against snow blindness to helping pilots navigate the skies without being blinded by the sun, the subject of today's episode not only protects your eyes, but has also been a staple of fashion for centuries, as it turns out. You're listening to The Story Behind, the extraordinary history of the ordinary. I'm your host, Emily Prokop, and this is the story behind sunglasses. It's weird that the story behind sunglasses begins with snow, actually. Inuits in prehistoric times used to carve slits in walrus ivory and create a kind of shield they would place over their eyes. The slits were the only portions from which the Inuits could see out of, and it's said they did this to help protect their eyes from the sun's reflection on the snow, which, if you've ever gone skiing on a sunny day, you may know can be rather intense. In 12th century China, smoky quartz was polished and cut into flat lenses and were placed over the eyes to help block out the sun. And these lenses were also used by judges in 13th century China as a way to help conceal the judges' expressions. Before we move on, I want to stop on this point for a second. The idea that wearing sunglasses can mask expressions. You've probably seen or heard of poker players using this technique to help them in the game. But here's an interesting debate in the poker world about the use of sunglasses. On one hand, it can help mask any giveaways a player might inadvertently make with their facial expressions. On the other, some poker professionals see it as something that is more for amateur poker players. While it does mask the expressions, some poker professionals say sunglasses can actually hide the expressions used by a player when they're intentionally bluffing as well. By the mid-1700s, opticians found that green-tinted glasses could be used to help those with vision problems. And they were even mentioned by Nathaniel Hawthorne and Edgar Allan Poe in their writings. By the early 20th century, tinted lenses began being prescribed for those suffering from syphilis. Not as a cure, but they did help those with light sensitivity, a common side effect. I should mention these tinted glasses weren't known as sunglasses quite yet. It wasn't until the early 20th century when pilots found out the hard way what happened when they didn't use proper eye protection. One such story was when a pilot named Shorty Schroeder flew his biplane above 33,000 feet in 1920. At the time, pilots weren't in cabins like we know today, but they were exposed to the elements. Pilots at the time protected their eyes with fur-lined goggles and wore thick leather hoods to protect themselves as temperatures got colder the higher they flew. In fact, pilots were known to fly into temperatures as cold as negative 80 degrees, so eye protection was a must. Except when Schroeder's goggles fogged up as he was high in the air, he made the mistake of taking them off. Within seconds, his vision became blurry and his eyes actually froze over. Believe it or not, he landed the plane, and his friend and U.S. Air Corps Lieutenant General John McCready was there to help his friend out of the plane. You would have thought that would have been enough to scare McCready from trying the same thing. However, a month later, he not only tried to beat his friend's altitude, but he even used the same plane. Luckily, McCready didn't run into the same problem as his friend, but he was surprised as just how blinding the sun could be high in the atmosphere, as he found his eyes hurt afterward. McCready began to work with Bausch & Lomb and is said to have contributed to the basic shape, tint, and fit of their Ray-Ban line. Fast forward a few years later, and sunglasses were a standard issue for the military. In fact, when General Douglas MacArthur was photographed wearing his signature aviator sunglasses during World War II, it was said to help popularize the style. And remember when I talked about green-tinted lenses being used to help those with vision problems? Turns out the emerald hue helps tone down the bright blues and whites of the sky and sun, and many Ray-Bans of the time were thin metal frames holding green-tinted lenses, as opposed to the Wayfarer Ray-Bans with black frames and lenses that might come to mind when you think of Ray-Bans. We'll go back to Ray-Bans in a bit, but before we move on, a few years after Bausch & Lomb began selling their tinted lenses, Sam Foster had begun creating sunglasses for the Woolworths, on the Atlantic City boardwalk. These were the first tinted glasses to be sold over the counter without the need for an optometrist's prescription. By the way, if you're wondering what the difference is between an optician and an optometrist is an eye doctor. They are the ones who can write the prescription for your glasses. An optician is the person who helps fill that prescription and fit your glasses. The trend helped catch on when Hollywood actors and actresses began sporting sunglasses to not only help avoid being recognized in public, but because of how films needed to be lit back then. The set lights were so intense that many actors' eyes were red and in pain following shoots, and the sunglasses helped mask this. It was obvious that sunglasses would soon become an icon for celebrities. Going back to Sam Foster, he had begun mass-producing plastic sunglasses, and the company evolved to designer frames. And by the 1960s, celebrities were seen behind them, and the marketing slogan became, "Who's behind those Foster grants?" Even though the lights in Hollywood may have dimmed on movie sets as time went on, sunglasses became a fashion statement most celebrities could make their own. Wayfarers and aviators from Ray-Bans are still considered classic sunglass styles, but Ray-Ban also paved the way for transition lenses, although theirs were known as ambermatic. If you're familiar with Hunter S. Thompson or even Johnny Depp's portrayal in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, that's the style Thompson was known for wearing. Fun side note, if you ever wondered what the little wire circle is over the bridge of his nose, the hole was put there by Ray-Ban as a cigarette holder. So it's even funnier that Hunter S. Thompson is often portrayed as using an actual cigarette holder in popular photographs. Over the years, sunglass trends have come and gone, but classic styles seem to find their way back into popularity. It's no secret that protecting our eyes is something humans do naturally, whether it's squinting or even the impulse to place a hand over your eyes when it's too bright outside. Sun exposure can damage the eyes, especially with direct exposure. Solar retinopathy is the scientific name for eye damage caused by short-term exposure. And if the term doesn't sound familiar now, wait until the next solar eclipse and you'll be seeing that term a lot, as most people question why special sunglasses are needed to stare at the sun. And these aren't just sunglasses with the usual UV protection. Eclipse glasses are specifically created and certified for safe direct viewing of the sun. If you're in the correct geographical location this year for the solar eclipse July 2nd, 2019, it's important that you check that any eclipse glasses you buy are certified. Back in 2017, the American Astronomical Society became aware of a number of retailers selling fake certified eclipse glasses. While actual blindness from staring at the sun is quite rare, those who have stared at the sun without proper protection have reported blurred vision, spots in front of their eyes for a period of time, as well as general pain. And one more thing I found interesting is the sun can affect your eyes more when your pupils are dilated. If you know eye anatomy, but some medicine, including decongestants, can cause pupils to dilate. Basically, this is the mom in me telling you not to go outside and stare at the sun for too long, especially if you've just taken your allergy medicine, kids. Information for this episode was sourced from the Sunglass Museum, the New York Times, Thrillist, and more links which can be found in the show notes at thestorybehindpodcast.com. Over in the Story Behind discussion group on Facebook, we have a weekly post called Trivia Tuesday, where members of the group can post their trivia to get read on the show. Although you can post any fun trivia you come across in the group at any time. Beckett posted a picture of gallium in her hand, which turns to a liquid state when warmed. Glenn posted, there have been a lot of stories about where the band Toto got its name, including the one that it came from Toto the dog in The Wizard of Oz. But that's not the case. The words in toto in Latin translate to all-encompassing, which seemed to fit since so many of Toto's band members played on so many albums across various genres. Band member David Hungate explained the meaning to the rest of the band, and they adopted it as their name. Matthew posted he heard on another podcast, No Such Thing as a Fish, that all British military tanks have tea-making facilities on board. And since I'm catching up for a few weeks I missed, here are a few from Moxie. In the early days, animators would use the signal, "Man is in the forest," when Walt Disney came into the office. An Australian beer company had to redesign their bottles because beetles were trying to mate with them. Also, pill bugs and roly-polies are considered crustaceans. Candice Bergen won so many Emmys for Murphy Brown that she asked them to stop nominating her. And there is an initiative to digitize books from the 18th and 19th centuries so that they will be widely available, rather than a single fragile copy in an archive somewhere. The OCR, or optical character recognition software they're using to do this, has a flaw though. It has difficulty distinguishing the word arms from the word arse. And Moxie swears this is not a joke, but the program literally cannot tell its arse from its elbow. This episode was brought to you by the Story Behind executive producers, who support the show through the Patreon page at patreon.com/thestorybehind, and who get access to full scripts of these episodes before they even go live, and a bonus episode every month. By the way, April and May's episodes are now posted on Patreon, so you can go check those out at patreon.com/thestorybehind. Special thanks to Mark from alliterative.net, who helped me out with the pronunciation for this month's bonus episode over on Patreon. Thanks for listening.